All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's review the topic of scatter plots. So scatter plots happen to show up quite a bit in our standardized test for Washington State, and so it's a good one to review. So there's a few things that we should talk about that exist on the scatter plot. So the first is that there's always a title, and that title should kind of describe what's going on. What is the data about? The key should tell you what those points represent. In this case, we're talking about what a test score is, and the title is Time Studying versus Test Score. So without even looking at the scatter plot, we have a really good idea of the information that we're looking at. You need to be able to label your axes. For example, your x-axis here is labeled as Time Studying, and your y-axis is labeled as the test scores. Now, do you remember talking about independent and dependent variables? Well, this is just a quick review. You won't be tested on it, but this is usually your independent variable. And this is your dependent being the y variable. And that makes sense because the dependent variable depends on what's happening here. And this makes sense because your test score depends on the number of hours that you've studied. Okay, just kind of some extra information there. You should also label your x-axis, and so in this case you've got hours. And notice how there's an even number of increments between these two. Right, it doesn't go 0, 1, 7, right? It goes 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And then you've also got your y-axis being labeled, and these are also even increments. In this case, they're increments of 5. It's not right to jump from 60 to 65 and then say 65 to 100. That doesn't make sense. You have to make sure they're even increments. And then you can see that you've got these plotted points here that indicate data values. So looking at this, what was the highest score in the class? Take a look at this. If you said 95, you would be correct. How many students studied for 1 hour? Okay, what do you think? If you said these 4, you are correct. And how many students scored above a 75%? Well, that's a whole lot of students. It's everyone above that line. And so if you were to count those up, you would get 12 students. And these 2 students below scored under 75%. So we're going to go ahead and create a scatter plot based on the following set of data. And so the first thing we do is figure out which one's the x, which one's the y, and in this case it's pretty obvious because it's in a table. But it is true that the money you earn depends on the amount of time that you're working. So that does make sense. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create my x and my y, and I'm just going to call this one money earned versus time worked. This is going to be my time, and I'm going to say it's going to be in hours. And then I'm going to have from 1 to 9 represented. So I'm going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Notice this did jump from 2 to 4, but I did not jump from 2 to 4 on my x-axis. I have to make sure that these are in even increments. Okay, now my y-axis is going to be money earned. And I'm trying to go from 8 to 85. So I'm going to start with 0. And I think I'm going to go up by 10s. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And then it's just a matter, now that I've got my x-axis, my y-axis, I've got my increments on there, I'm just going to go ahead and plot my points. So 1/8 is roughly here. 2/15 is roughly here. Let's see, 4/35. And then these don't have to be perfect, but I'm just doing my best job. 5/45. 6/50. And 9/85 all the way up here. And we'll talk later about lines of best fit, but you can see in general that there's a positive correlation, that there's a positive slope, that there is a relationship between the number of hours that you work and the amount of money that you make. So that's it for scatter plots, just a quick review of that. Thanks, everyone.